would, but you'd at least got working and see what a Clifford carries his eyes, you know. I
Look,
me
Miss
Jerry
Shrop's
Water
is
can flip
there.
it or but anyway, he says it's not gonna be a kiss and truck.
Winfred will like that. Play with it some more. Do it some more. Do it some more.
The camera already?
This time, 12 weeks. If I had had her over there,
What did y'all end up having a good time or did you do enough? Did you do anything?
I really do. I should have probably
They ought to just quit trying. And it'll just happen. You're not grandma yet either.
Here's some down here. Hard stuff.
Well, most of us don't have these, we got a problem, so we get, one bag for the year, it's good. No, sure.
I don't. I've heard Sean.
She transferred it out from upstairs. It's good.
had this before the age.
You look so pretty. Y'all did outstanding. Really good.
Before anybody else don't go to work and doing the taxpayer, so we get started. I'm gonna let Dennis go first.
Sean and Sharon, we do with the new salvation since
I don't know if I'm going first. I never do first on anything else around here, but I appreciate it, Bill. Can you step close this here? Well, I gotta have no voice, I guess, but good carry. Good evening. Pleasure seeing everybody here to, Winfred, incidentally, I do have a grade 7 job open now. Okay. Well, if not, would you mind if we recruit Patrick or one of the boys?
I think either one of them be glad to.
Okay.
I'd
Okay.
be glad for either one of them.
Okay. What I want to do is first recognize our guests. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to recognize our past revenue officers, managers. See, we have a couple managers in the house. Rufus Pollard from Tyler, Texas Collections. Incidentally, Rufus is my mentor, my first boss. Henry McKinnell is here from Baton Rouge. You'll probably hear from him later on. Any past revenue officers, you all want to stand?
Oh, yeah.
Any retired past revenue officers? Billy Young, Cliff Pate, and
Garner.
Okay, I want to acknowledge my group, the revenue officers that are in OCR's, TSR's, secretary. Would you all stand for me, please? Don't be scared. I'm not evaluating you. Don't be scared. I want to say a few words about a person who I really admire as a group manager, as you well know. And I do have this red book here, you know, Smile, I keep a file on all of my people, you know, kind of know what they're doing. And I got a letter here that was sent to him by Winfred when the day he retired, March 2nd. It's a quite lengthy letter, so I won't belabor the point and read this to you. But there were some quite touching things here. Me as a young manager, number one, when I came into the group in Shreveport, I've been a manager about 17 months at the time, and you come in and you've got people who've been around 25, 30 years, and everybody asks you, so what are you going to do with those people who've been around that long? I said, well, you let them do whatever they want to do. As long as they're doing what they should do, you let them do what they want to do. So, well, how are you going to handle Weldon? He's been around for 30 years, and he's somewhat of an informal leader in the group. People respect him and they follow him. I said, well, definitely, I'll let him do whatever he wants to do. And to my amazement and to my surprise, not so much surprise, he was a very good leader. I've always worked real well with him. When I was in training in Dallas, starting out in '84, and some of you might know the Revenue Officer John Harper was our training instructor. And John Harper would, if you all know him, he walks around and talks, he's a good instructor. He was telling us about a revenue officer in Shreveport who he deemed the best revenue officer in the world. At that time, I had no idea that I would end up in Shreveport as his guy's manager. So you can see how I've come pretty much full circle. And when I got to Shreveport and started looking at some of his work, I found him being just what John had described. Pretty much the best one I'd ever seen. I don't know if the visitor will know, but on the grade 12 level, you don't go out every day and collect $100,000. People just don't have that kind of money laying around. If they do, they probably pay taxes, but Winfred would turn grade 12 cases like a grade 9 or a grade 7. And I thought that was phenomenal to have that kind of success. But not just Winfred, my whole group does a real good job in the area of returning cases. So Winfred by far was the leader, but like I say, I keep a record on all my people, just so I know what they're doing. Now I'm specifically looking for something here where I wrote a little something for him maybe a couple of years back, and he got to go to Washington, Patsy and he accepted nomination of the Employee of the Year, and he got to go up and stand beside Mike Dolan, I think, Secretary of Treasury, the highest honor ever given to a revenue officer, and that was quite fitting for a person of his caliber. I'm also looking at a couple other articles that hit the paper here while Weldon has some good success in his area. But we won't go on to belabor the point. Like I said, I do keep a record on my people, so I know what they're doing. So this is Winfred's record.
Do you have a teller in there?
Oh, somewhere I do. I'm glad you mentioned that. I've got one here. And there was a sticky on this thing when it came to me. It says, I guess this is yours for the year. Now, you probably seeing dailies every day. And the success area and the percentage of getting these things, if like you send them in every day, you're going to get some. This guy, I've only got one here, and when he got this one, he came to me and said, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. And I'm thinking, wow. You know, we make errors sometimes and we feel like well, it's just commonplace, but this guy took pride in his work enough to say, if I made an error, I'll do better next time. I'm sorry, I don't want to do this. That's special. Like I say, I keep a file on my people, so I know what they're doing. I'm not sending a message. But anyway, he's the first revenue officer that I know in our organization. When I first got here, I noticed he had an exceptional rating. And I called the branch chief at the time and said, hey, this guy's got a straight outstanding rating. You know, I've never seen one before. I said, are you sure he's a... He said, well, the district director seemed to think he was. I said, well, fine. And from that point on, he had an outstanding rating, and I see why. The guy came to work every day. He helped a lot of people, and most times when my people come to me with a problem, I said, talk to Winfred. Because I'm no fool. I've been here 10 years, he's been here 30. He's got to have a better idea about doing this job than me. So I said, go ask Winfred. Or go ask Bill, or go ask John. And they're pretty much have been the backbone of our high performance dream team in this area. And incidentally, Henry is here, one of my co-managers, and we are probably leading the district, Henry. You never acknowledge that, but we are. I don't want to belabor the point. I just want to.
You ain't gonna be long after Winfred.
Well, I got a Winfred sitting here, and here. So I'm not worried. I don't want to belabor the point. I think this is a fitting retirement party for somebody who's done so much for this group, for this area, for the community, for his family, for his co-workers. He's really been an exceptional employee for me, really been a lot of help for me. As a young manager coming in, you know, the first thing that you shy about is you're going to get in there and not be able to do some things. You're going to have somebody reading down your back of what you don't know. Well, maybe there's some things I don't know, or didn't know, but it never became to be an issue because of the way that Winfred dealt with situations. And he was always there to help me on those technical cases that we didn't have any answers for. He always seemed to have an answer because he had 32 years of good, dedicated experience at doing it. And that should not be undermined. He's an excellent employee, he's always been, and I'm just happy to be here to bid him good well. Now, like I say, Winfred, I still got big things are open. Should you decide to come back? Okay. All right.
You want to say a few words?
Well, a lot of you may not know it, but Winfred and I goes way back. Way back. When I first started working with the Internal Revenue Service, Winfred was my coach. And through the first several years, he always gave me good advice. And I thought, since I was lucky enough to retire before he did, I'd give him a little advice about retirement. Oh, hey, folks. Yeah, there's several things that you need to do. First of all, is the only thing that really matters. You don't really care what time it is, if someone drives over and sits over yonder, and OJ comes on the left. And sooner or later, Patsy. Sooner or later, Patsy's going to tell you to get out of her hair. Please leave her house. Go away. First job I had was delivering telephone books. Them things come out in the winter. They don't come out in the summer. It's cold, it's nasty. get the wave water up to your knees. My living room looked like Walmart's warehouse. I walked at least 100 miles, I drove another 100 miles, and them dead gum things get heavy. And they don't pay you for it. There's no money involved. So immediately thereafter, I was lucky enough that the Census Bureau came out. They was looking for anybody that could count to 10. I halfway qualified. There are people in North Bossier Parish right now that hadn't been counted. If you think a financial statement on some of our former taxpayers was hard to do, you should try to fill out that long form with a 96-year-old woman who's deaf, her 75-year-old son who also lived there, deaf, 8 grandkids, and 3 great-grandkids. When I sent that report in and wrote my report on the back of it, they just completely obliterated everything. They don't even show up anymore anyway. The last thing I tried to do before I realized I had retired and I didn't have to do it was pick up aluminum cans. I've been in every ditch in Bowden City. I know where all the waste dumped. I had a new bicycle when I retired. In a 6-month period of time, I went 6,000 miles and made $6. All kidding aside, I wish you the best. Enjoy.
That's how I got there, was coming from this group. You know, Herman was my group manager one time. And the group was Bill, Winfred, and Cliff, and a couple other guys, mostly guys, in fact, all guys at that time. I got a picture of them back then. But Herman once asked me what my goal was. He said, what are your goals? Where do you want to go in the service? And I guess I'd been a revenue officer maybe 2-3 years at the most. And my response was then, and probably still would be today, that one of the things I always wanted to do was to be able to say that I was as good a revenue officer as Winfred Welter. And I don't think I've quite made it yet, Winfred. I got about 2 more years to go to try, but I don't think anybody can equal Winfred as one of the best revenue officers you will ever meet. That's my tribute to Winfred, and I still feel that way. I think he's the best there is.
I know everybody knows John Bird.
Elaine wanted me to write notes down that she could approve or reject. Because nobody in here has any idea what I'm about to say, you know.
For you.
But I'm reminded of a joke. Who said that? At a funeral. The widow was sitting there with her children, and she heard all of these great and wonderful stories about the husband that was laying there in the casket. And they went on and on what a great man he was and how much he had done. And she nudged her son and said, "Son, go up there and look and see if that's your dad." My bullshit censor is I stand by this man. For those of you that don't know, we're talking about Winfred. I'm supposed to be the rowdy one, you know. And he would tell me what he had done. Now Henry, apparently they allowed this when Henry was young, That was a hell of a long time ago. And Cliff, if he doesn't give a revenue officer a good feeling of self-esteem, when you retire, you know what you're gonna wind up doing. I guess I've got to come back to work to avoid the 3 things. Some of which I've already tried. We're saving the cans, but I'm gonna quit giving them a pat. Pat and Dick, no more cans. Henry was my group manager too, and he's one of the few, by the way, in the New Orleans district that I still have a good relationship with. He and Dennis. I had Henry for a short time. Then I got a group manager that told me, after it was all over, she told me if I had just done a couple of the things she said, I would have been the Winfred Weldon of the South. And I said, big deal. I left out the F word. As it come out, as most of you know now, Winfred worked on me. Charlotte I'd come in the morning, and they'd be talking, back and forth, and I'd walk up and they'd shut up. And they knew they were trying to figure out how they could tell me that I needed to fall in line, And they just never could figure out the right way to do it. Instead of me becoming the Winfred Weldon of the South, he became the John Bird of the North. If you can't whip them, join them. I've been up here about 7 years. And Winfred and I have not always agreed, and particularly about work matters. If Dennis sent you to talk to both of us, you at least got 2 possible solutions. Take your pick. Do it his way, do it my way. Different outlook, different perspective. But the one thing I appreciate most, and one thing we didn't, I'm sure he said a few things about me to y'all, I've said a few things about him to you the same way, but we made it through it. And the worst thing about it was having to listen to him tell his stories about his 2 worthless sons. It's like therapy. My family tree don't fork. Well, you know you're a redneck if you're an ex-revenue officer and your name is Cliff Pace. But anyway, it was therapy to me because I'm really depressed about a dog. Well, Bob and Kayla have the same feeling now. Everybody, if you just listen to someone, I heard some stories from Carl and Jury, Joyce, and Ricky. Of course, everybody got their own stories, but if you raise teenagers, Marion, we don't talk to somebody, talk to Marion about raising teenagers. I don't know if she's still home or not. I had to listen about this to these 2 sons, and it made me feel real good about my children. 7 years I've been up here, and we grew to know one another outside the office, inside the office. This red book that Dennis had, and no telling what's in that red book, but it had very little to do with how you do the job. Dennis can get up and rebut this later. But there is a measure, I think, that you can apply to whether someone has been successful as a revenue officer. And that's if when they leave the area, the people that they worked with have a strong feeling toward compliance. If they feel more strongly about abiding by the tax laws. And I think without exception, most of us, regardless of what Winfred said about us or did to us, and Lord knows he's done enough, would agree that Shreveport probably is more compliant with the tax laws because he's been here 87 years. The 7 years that I've been here, I've told many of you, I've had more, I've learned more, I've done more here in the 7 years that I've been here than the rest of my career, and it was lengthy and been in several districts because generally it took them 2 or 3 years to figure me out. I've learned more and done more since I've been here than anywhere before. And it's in no small part due to his help, his assistance. Charlotte, Winfred, and I sat in there in the cubicle as Cliff moved on into picking up cans and delivering phone book. But together, and when no one ever really tried to discourage me, even though they disagreed with me on many occasions about many things, they at least let me do some of this stuff without making a big stink about it. I appreciate that. I think all of us can recognize that if you've been a revenue officer for 32 years, you deserve 32 years. And a few of us, just a few of us, know the change that's come about in that 32 years. Most of you, if you've been here 5 or 10 years, haven't a clue as to the way it started, as to the way it was. And you probably will, it will be very unlikely that you'll see many career revenue officers ever again, because they got too much sense. When we hired on, they told us that a revenue officer career field, I worked with some grade 9s, and Henry, Cliff, all of you, Rufus, we had a grade 9, and Dallas, when I came on, been a grade 9 about 10 years, waiting to get a grade 11. I think he retired a grade 9. We had all the rest of them, but one revenue officer were grade 11s. Like he said, we were all white males. You know, I'm not making a diversity or affirmative action speech here, but the career program was that you aspired to be an 11, and then you aspired to be a 12. You aspired to go out. I asked Susan one time. We were going out here in one of her areas. She said, I don't want to be like you. You know? I understand that. We understand that. But you're looking probably at, 100 years of stupidity, maybe. But you're not going to see career revenue officers very much, particularly one that was hired in one spot and stayed in one spot. You're going to move around a lot. You're going to move out of the revenue officer field into, praise God for Jimmy's action, you know. But it's just not going to happen that much in your career time. And back when we hired on, we can't explain it to you, but it was just the thing to do. He did it. He deserves our congratulations. Thank you very much.
I have a couple of things to say about what John said. John said he worked for Henry, and he was one of the few people that he was still on good terms with. And he said he worked for him for a short period of time. Wasn't that redundant? Another thing he said is that Winfred talked about his boys. Well, recently we had a surprise birthday party for John. His daughters were, we all went in the back room so that he wouldn't know we were there. And we all had to talk as loud as we could in front of the daughters to keep them from hearing what John was saying about his gripes about him. I guess I'll say a few words about Winfred before I do, so that everybody won't think I'm going to say the wrong thing here. Kayla and I have something we would like to present to Winfred. You gonna?
Well, I thought you were going to tell first.
No, we're going to do it right now.
Do I have to stand?
No. I was trying to think about Winfred's career and about his retirement, and I got to thinking, it reminds me of the story of the guy who bought an elephant. He saw this elephant and he decided he wanted it, and so he bought it, and he took it home. He didn't have enough money to feed it. He had to come up with enough money to feed this elephant, so he decided that what he would do, he had seen elephants in the circus stand up on their hind feet. He had even seen one stand up on its back feet. So he decided that he could make some sure money. So he ran an ad, and he said anybody who could make this elephant get all 4 feet off the ground, he would give them $10,000. but you had to pay $100 to try. So he had a bunch of people come by and they tried everything they could. And finally this little blue sports car drove up and this guy got out. He said, I want to give it a try. Here's my $100. So he went around and put a blindfold on that elephant. He went around behind it and he took a baseball bat and he just whacked it as hard as he could in a tender area with his baseball bat. The elephant jumped about a foot off the ground. He said, give me the $10,000. And so the guy was devastated. Now he was out $10,000. So he had to find a different way to make some money. So he said he knew that the elephant could raise his head up and down, but he said he'd give $10,000 to anybody who could make the elephant turn its head from side to side. So this same guy came by. He had a few people come by. Here's this wood sports car. It drives up. And this guy says, I want to see if I can get the $10,000. And he said, here's my $100 bill. So he walked around to the front of the elephant. And he said, you remember me? And the elephant. And he said, you want to do that again? You remember your career? You want to do that again? A lot of people think that Winfred and I have been around for so long we wrote dinosaurs to work. But things were a lot different when we started. We took the stagecoach to New Orleans. We were down there, it was so long ago that we actually saw a parking place there. We were told to go to the YMCA. Our class was at the YMCA. And we had to stay at the YMCA, and we got $3.75 per diem. But we had to stay there. They said they wanted us to learn something. Well, the rooms didn't have private baths. They had a community shower. Community bath, community restroom. They wanted us to learn something. Well, the first thing we learned is if you drop the soap, leave it. They didn't have you couldn't get a wake-up call there because there was not a telephone in the room. So what they would do, they would just leave a couple of squares of X-Lax on your bed. I got to know Winfred when we got back. I traveled with him a little bit, and I have to tell you a true story. One time Winfred and I wanted to go, there was a big sale, and we wanted to go to the sale, and Winfred had a taxpayer coming in. And he came in and we wanted to get out of there, so Winfred said, you have to pay right now. I have to look at a financial statement, you have to pay up. So this guy paid up. And I went down there and I said, Winfred, put that money in your pocket, we'll go collect it. No one will ever know the difference. So we went out, we were over on Market Street. We went to this sale and we came back, and all of us drove little Volkswagen. I drove in the alley next to the building, and Winfred got out, and I said, you go in the front door, I'll go in the back door. I'll park the car, and I'll go in the back door. Herman Garner was our group manager. And I said, I'll go in the back door. And so Winfred went in the front door, and there was Herman standing there waiting for him. And he said, where have y'all been? Winfred said, we went out to collect an account. And Herman said, let me see. So Winfred pulled out a receipt, pulled out a check, said, here it is. Herman looked at the address on there and he said, where's that address? And Winfred said, I don't know. I wasn't even looking. True story. And Winfred met me at the back door and he said, you better know where that street is. I still remember the street. I do too. be pronounced Buena Vista, but in Shreveport, in our language, it's pronounced Buena Vista. I'll never forget that as long as I live. Anyway, I got to know a lot about Winfred when we worked together when we were grade 9. And I learned, you know, that he's from northern Lincoln Parish. We were talking about the rednecks a few minutes ago. Up there, in the area that he's from, they don't date women under 15 years old. Unless, of course, they're not related to them. Winfred grew up there around Bernice. When he was in junior high school, probably a lot of you don't know about this, and Winfred may not even remember it. When he was in junior high school, he fell off of a horse, and he got his foot caught in a stirrup. And he could have been seriously injured, but the store manager ran out and unplugged it. About that same time, a ventriloquist came to town. Winfred didn't know about it. His dad invited the guy over to the house. And Winfred said, I'll show you around the farm here. So he showed him around, and Winfred didn't know this guy was a ventriloquist. And they got to the chickens, and one of the chickens said, Winfred doesn't gather the eggs, and Winfred doesn't feed us every day. Winfred didn't know what to think about that. So I went and got to where the pigs were, and he said, one of them said, Winfred doesn't feed us either. And he doesn't clean our pen. Winfred could stand this no longer. So finally he said, he turned to the ventriloquist and he said, don't you believe anything the sheep tell you? He decided he would major in accounting, and he finally came to work for Internal Revenue Service. I asked him why he went to work for Internal Revenue Service. He said, well, he'd always wanted to run away and join the service, and this was as close as he could. Anyway, we worked together for a long time. I asked him, Winfred's been into bottle collecting, been into antiques, refinishing furniture. And I asked him if he was, I said, have you ever thought about learning to ski? And he said, no, I feel like I'm going downhill faster than a deer. So, anyway, I figured that Winfred was ready to retire. And I'll give you the 10 best reasons that I think Winfred was ready to go. Number 10, he realized that not only does IRS have a retirement plan, but here you age faster. Number 9, here it's not only your day, not only not your day, but it hasn't been in 20 years. Number 8, he started talking to himself and even he wasn't listening. Number 7, he worked hard as he could for his ship to come in, and then he realized that it was the USS Dummy. He watched a live chair commercial on TV and thought it was a great idea. Number 5, his sincerity span isn't what it used to be. Number 4, whatever makes him tick appears to need a new battery. Number 3, Winfred became an orange barrel on the information highway. Number 2, he discovered it was a dog-eat-dog world and he was wearing milk-bone underwear. realized that one of the benefits of unemployment is he would be working for IRS. I was thinking, you know, John was talking about what we could do. I know Cliff's talked about what he's been doing since he retired. And I was thinking long and hard about what we could do when we retire. And I just, what does this job qualify you for? Then the other day I was driving down Fayette Parkway and there it was, bigger than life. This job qualifies you to be a gaming boat pilot. That's all it qualifies you for, to be a gaming boat pilot. Think about it. They built a dam around those boats to hold water in. And when these pilots go to work today, every day, they realize that then, regardless of how hard they try, they're not going to get anywhere. Number two, they realize that if anything goes wrong, they're going to get blamed for it. And number three, all they really have to worry about is losing their water. Anyway, Winfred came up to work the last day, and he walked in, and it was March the 3rd, and he walked in, and he said, "I just want to say goodbye to Dennis." And we said, "Join the club." Only kidding, Dennis. But anyway, Winfred and I are going to form a partnership, and we're going to start a new business venture. And so I thought you can stand up here, Winfred, and I'll give you this. And we're going to start a new business venture. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I think that Pat and Norma have a gift that they would like to give you.
Dennis mentioned a tellerator. We have one for him here. It's a 5919. Every day we have a teller envelope that we put in our money and send it out. Marion and I see him every day. Winfred has always done a cartoon of some sort to the teller with arrows. And we always look forward to seeing Winfred's teller envelope. With this one, in his own handwriting. Remember doing that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Final, teller, 49-2410, Weldon, 3395, $125. The teller error is, oh, okay. Read it out loud, Winfred.
You know it's time to retire when all you can do is $125 a day.
And Sally and I have something we would like to give you.
Safe to open, just bite.
It doesn't bite.
Doesn't explode.
Doesn't explode.
Another bag of Cheetos.
Open it up.
Do I have to?
Yeah.
Let me see if it's safe. You might want to zoom in on this real quick.
Screw the golden years.
For those in the back, it says, "Screw the golden years." Mr. Bird, and I'm gonna take this a second here, Mr. Bird and his lovely bride saw fit to do something for my birthday. And they bought me a real nice little t-shirt. You know, the No Fear merchandise is real popular. And I was so proud when I opened that No Fear t-shirt with this good logo on the back. But then I turned it over and on the back it said, "The older I get, the better I was."
Okay, Galen, who else? Joyce? Kayla's gonna bring something up right now.
Well, Bob, I see they found something you could do.
Dennis is going to make the first presentation. Yeah, you can say it, Dennis.
I believe this is from our in-charge group. I'll do the honest way to open it. I don't want to open it. Well, this is something that the group kind of got together, the community got together. What can make you do this? It looks like it's chicken. These are wrapped. Wow. You know, we always keep these nice pictures of birds and stuff on his wall, so we decided to give him something from us. And this plaque is signed by the whole POJ. Yeah, that's beautiful.
You can put it, yeah.
This is from all the employees of the POJ.
That's from everybody.
From everybody, New Orleans and everybody. And retirees and.
Just when I thought I was gonna get out of work, now I gotta go back to work. Thank you very much. Let me tell you how old that me and Bill are, John too, when we came to work, they called the typewriter a typewriter. Now it's a word processor. Personal. Thank you.
This is a traditional gift from all the employees of the group.
Group 24.
The traditional grip gift from Group 24. Wow. It says Seiko on the box.
That's a garage sale box.
I'm used to those. Oh, how beautiful. Thank you.
Second watch.
And it says WEW IRS 3395. Well, thank you.
We might have put something else on it, but they charged extra.
say something serious for a change. I worked side by side with Winfred Weldon for 32 years. And it's really been a pleasure. It's been my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Point out.
We have some cake. Anybody else have any comment? Okay, Herman Garner.
I like these words they throw around here like Bill saying, I've worked for 32 years. Now, let's start to get deep up here. But you see why I don't have any hair, and it's great. I've had to put up with these guys for a long time, but they're parts of the family as far as I'm concerned, because they are some of the top workers in the state or in the United States. But Bill, I got a call one day on Bill. You know, he used to dress real fancy, have a sport hat, drive a big car. He went on one of these compliance checks up in Morningsport. They got a call in and said that some mafia people up here working. You remember that? Yeah, that's what I had. He had that Thunderbird in. But they thought the mafia had arrived at Morningsport. Cliff was worried about pallbearers at his funeral because he worked for the IRS. He refereed football games, and his wife Nita worked with the Selective Service. They had no friends. But I hope he's made some friends by now. It's good to see a lot of you back here today. I'm starting my 17th year of retirement, and I think it's real good. I recommend it. But Billy Young over here from Dallas, he was one of our revenue officers. Henry McKinnell, Ed Handel, Fort Monroe, Bill, Cliff over here. You know, he was driving, getting up at 1 o'clock on Monday morning, driving to Fort Worth, working with the engineers when we hired him. That was a great relief when he got to get up regular and he'd come in on Friday night. But we had some real top revenue officers back then. I thought we had one of the best classes back when we recruited back there in '63. And I wasn't disappointed in them because we got some good evaluations on them. The difficulty was keeping them. I would suspect that Winfred would be in top management right now had he been willing to be mobile. He elected to stay here in Shreveport. I stayed in Shreveport too. I was a revenue officer. I was a group manager. I wouldn't go to New Orleans for a branch chief, so they moved the branch chief up here. So, but I stayed at most of my career right here in Shreveport too. Winfred possesses all those qualities, those beat and deal qualities, good decision maker, good evaluation of facts, and he could close a case and the guy was thanking for giving him the money. He was that type of revenue. Cliff and Billy and Ed, Bill was the same caliber too. They could do real good work too. Bill was an OIC specialist for a long time. That's offer and compromise. He'd been offering to compromise his job for a long time. He keeps making an offer every year. I'll get out if you'll pay me this. But he was an OIC specialist, but he hadn't got him to accept his offer yet. Bill, Winfred was when he started something, he got all involved in it. I remember when he started that bottle collecting. It's holes down there on Red River right now, they're still filling up. He dug holes down there and collected those bottles. had to leave the state, went up to Arkansas, maybe up to Virginia, to run out of places down here. And I thought he was raising two nice boys, but when that boy jumped out of that plane that day out there, I wondered about him. Pat's jumping out of airplanes now, and Mark's running, one of the best distant runners, I guess, in this part of the country. But I watched his family grow. Pat was an excellent teacher. You get good reports on her from the teaching standpoint. But Winfred, I always considered a good friend and a good worker. And I appreciate him very much. I want to congratulate him.
I wasn't gonna give Winfred equal time a few minutes ago, so I guess I better give him equal time.
Call it a cheap shot, call it a sheep shot, right? At least I do have time to get even. Wow. Thanks for the gifts. I appreciate the gifts, but I appreciate the friendship more. Somebody said that the act of retiring is like going through a friendly divorce. A friendly divorce, is there such a thing?
No.
You quit doing the things you've been doing for years, and you start doing things you haven't had time to do or haven't chosen to do in years. You quit associating with people that you've been side by side with for a long time. 32 years is a long time to work with somebody, and I really don't know how I put up with him 32 years. It's strange how you can look forward to something for a long time, like retirement, and when it finally gets here, you're a little apprehensive about it. Well, the day I left, on March the 3rd, I was a little more than apprehensive, wasn't I, Pat? I was a little scared. For 32 years, I'd gotten up every morning at 5 o'clock, gone to work, deal with people who owed the government money, and that's a very stressful job. And as you know, whether you collect taxes or audit returns or whatever you do in dealing with people, when you get your hand in their pocket, you're in the most sensitive part of their body, especially when you're touching their billfold. I've been doing this job so long, I can't hardly remember when I wasn't a revenue officer. When I came to work, there were 3 young guys, me and Bill and Huey. There were a bunch of old guys down there, old guys. They were in their 50s or 60s when I started working. And now Bill and John and I are the old guys. Suddenly, we are the old guys. I can't hardly believe that 32 years have gone by since Mr. Garner, since Herman hired me as a revenue officer. 32 years is a career. What is a career, anyhow? I've been thinking about really what a career was over the last few months, and thinking about this new milestone in my life when you decide to change and start doing something different. I wonder when each of us make our final mark in life and our milestones turn into headstones, what are they going to say about us? What will those people say about you and me that we've dealt with over the years? Did we treat them fair? How did we respond to the public? Somebody said we're too late smart and too soon old. When I started this job, I never thought about being old, but I know I am, because now I'm retired. You have to be old to retire, don't you? But I'm still waiting for the smart part to come along. Now it seems that occupies a lot of my thoughts lately, because since I started my career, our 2 children were born, they've grown up, they have careers of their own. Few people I know have stayed on as a revenue officer for 32 years. Now, the approximate 300 or 400 or 500 that I've known during my career, I think less than 10 have retired. They've gone on to other things. They've gone on to other careers. They've gone on to other occupations. They left. I kept a book through the years, letters from taxpayers, commendation letters from managers and attaboys and that kind of stuff through the years. And I started looking through that book before I retired, and it brought back some very fond memories. And I'd like to just share a few more with you. The first thing in my book, Irma, was a letter from you congratulating me and Bill and Huey on going to Monroe and working the detail in Monroe. And we closed 350 TDIs in a matter of 3 days over there. Nobody ever thought that could have been done. It hadn't been done since all those years. And then the next
We remind you of it all the time.
never forgot it, did you? I well remember the very first big case I had. The guy had tried to get into the horse racing business. Fact is, the man is the forerunner of Louisiana Downs. He formed the corporation that eventually ended up being Louisiana Downs. At one time, I seized from that taxpayer all of the stock and had it in my possession to offer it for sale. And if we had that stock today, we could own Louisiana Downs. I remember after that case was closed, Herman brought me a memorandum from the chief of the DAR branch, Nick Valentina. Our first son was born about 4 days before that case closed, and Nick put a little note on the little memorandum he wrote congratulating getting the money on his case. And he said, "Oh, by the way, congratulations on your first son. I hope he's got enough sense not to be a revenue officer." So on and so forth. I remember making some 100% penalties on a CPA here in town, one of the worst procrastinators we've ever had. At one time, I had 3 different 100% penalties against him. And I met him on the street one day, and he was complaining to me about the fact that we were trying to collect this tax from him. And he said, "Well, I'm up to my butt in debt." And I said, "You know, I never saw you in that position before." I found a letter in my file from a woman in Bossier City thanking me for collecting their tax. She and her husband hadn't filed an income tax return for 12 years. We assessed the tax, we collected the tax, we seized money out of their safety deposit box. We made several seizures of property. And when it was over, the lady came and sat at my desk and cried and said, "I want to thank you for getting us straight. I haven't slept in 15 years, but I can sleep now." I remember the afternoon I was held hostage by a drunk roughneck in Marion, Louisiana. Didn't know if I was going to get out alive or not. And it seemed like only yesterday, Herman, we was working the biggest taxpayer case I guess we had dollar-wise, back when you were manager and I was a revenue officer at the time. A man and woman in Lincoln Parish was convicted of income tax evasion. The court read them the Riot Act one day, and they got up and walked out of court and never paid another dime tax voluntarily from that day forward until we caught up with them again. They owed about $2 million in 1969. I don't know what that would equate to in today's dollars, but that would sure be some big bucks. I remember the 60-day detail that I went on to Denver, Colorado in 1973 when I had aspirations of being a group manager. That changed my mind completely, Herman. That's why I stayed in Shreveport. I went to Denver and had 12 revenue officers working for me. We tore the district up. We closed more cases. 12 revenue officers that we carried up there from Arkansas and Louisiana and Kansas. We closed more cases, those 12, than the other 80 revenue officers in Denver. I remember teaching in 11 advanced revenue officer schools during 1972 through 1975. I remember how scared I was when I went out to seize a little prize Corvette from a guy. He'd already been found guilty of tax evasion twice and served a jail sentence. And the rumor was he'd already killed 2 people. I remember hooking up the record to his prize Corvette that had about 50 miles on it. And then he said, "I'll see you sometime, but you're not going to know when you're going to see me." He was later found guilty of arson. He burned down his buildings, his stores. He was found guilty of counterfeiting and attempted murder. But one of the highlights I remember was going to Mom Miller's to eat. If you don't know about Mom Miller's, when we were growing up out at Cedar Grove, Mom Miller had a boarding house, and this is where you could go and and you could pay your money, and you could live, and you could eat. Well, Bill and Henry and I, and Huey and Herman, a lot of us used to go out there and eat lunch. One day we were sitting there eating lunch, and let me tell you, this guy used to eat.
Oh, my God.
We were there sitting eating lunch one day, and Henry was with us. And we had finished eating, and Bill was still eating. And there was a guy sitting over here, they had big long tables. You just went in and sat down around the table, and they brought the food out on the table, and you just ate till you fell out. There's a guy sitting right here, and he finished eating, and he pulled his chair back from the table, and he was watching Bill. And the lady came by and said, would you like something else to eat? He said, no. She came by about 10 minutes later and said, would you like something else to eat? No. She said, well, what are you waiting on? He said, I'm just going to sit here and see how much he can eat. I remember acting as a collection person on a 3-man drug task force team we had. We had a revenue officer, a criminal investigator, and a revenue agent. And back when drugs really got to be a big problem, when they caught a person who had a large amount of drugs and money in his possession, we would go to that jail where they had this guy incarcerated. The revenue agent would terminate his tax year. We'd make an assessment on the phone. I'd serve a levy and get the guy's money, and the criminal investigator was there to protect us while we did this. We went on lots of jail calls back then. I hope you never have to do that anymore, because I'll tell you the truth, I was scared to death every time we went. The first case we had was on a long-haired hippie, had hair down to about his waist, and he had been convicted about 3 times of trying to beat people up and intimidation. And we went to Ruston, and we took about $40,000 off of this guy. And I was sitting in my office about 3 days later down on Market Street, and we used to have private offices. And I looked up, and here this guy comes in my office and slams the door. Nobody but me and him in that room. Well, I'm still alive. I remember working 4 local psychiatrists at the same time in 1977. I don't know what it did to them, but I'm still about half crazy over doing it. I'll never forget interviewing a man in his late 60s in his home in South Highlands who hadn't filed a tax return since World War II. All he had done was drink, cash royalty checks that was left by his family. His family was extremely wealthy. I talked to him that morning, and he said, money's not a problem for me. I've never worried about money. Never had to. My mother told me there's enough money in the safety deposit box at First National Bank, and I've never opened it. I don't know how much money's in there. And that morning, he went around the house and pulled out envelopes, and we sat down and opened them, and I counted over $100,000 in royalty checks he had just laying around the house. He was later found to owe about $1 million in taxes. Bill, do you remember the day we seized the local seafood restaurant in 1974 that was operated by the mafia? This was the mafia. The owner of the restaurant, after we shut the restaurant down, got real crossways with the big boys, and he moved to Dallas, and his 5-year-old son was playing in the front yard, and a car drove through the front yard and killed a little kid. I remember the local oil man who threw me and Huey out of his office one morning because we went down to try to collect some household employment tax on his maid. He said, I'm not going to pay it. I don't care what you do to it. I'm not going to pay it. So we went back and got Richard Caldwell and Herb Kilpatrick, and we went back to the man's office that afternoon, and if you know Richard Caldwell, we walked up to the guy's desk and he said, you see what I got right here? He said, you're not going to do one thing to Weldon, and he's going to collect his tax, or you're going to have to put up with us all night. The guy went out and got the cash and paid us and we left. Philip, do you remember windfall profits tax? I remember teaching in 25 different CPE classes through the years. I remember testifying in federal court a dozen times. I found a letter from Charlie Hall. He was the now retired regional commissioner of collections in the Southeast region. He wrote me a note one time on a case that I closed, and he said, and I'm going to quote, your efforts to protect the revenue really make me proud to be a revenue officer. I remember seizing this road builder's home in Spring Lake one morning, and his wife going through the house saying, "You better get out of here because I'm gonna blow my brains out." I remember seizing and selling 2 large seafood restaurants in 1985. I remember the crash of the good sales we had. Charlotte, do you remember seizing the radio station? Taking the radio station off the air? Everybody said that couldn't be done. There wasn't any procedure to take a radio station off the air. Well, we took it off the air and they paid, didn't they? I remember working tax protesters. Lots of cases where people who said, "I'm not going to pay, I don't care what you do." I remember John and I working the biggest seated case, I guess probably ever we had in this part of the world. We ended up collecting $1.6 million, made 195 seizures of real estate on one case, 195 separate seizures. And how could any of us ever forget John Bird and the level sale? 4 days and nights in hell, somebody called it. $285,962.14, John. Congratulations. And then if that wasn't enough, he got us in the Gallagher sale. I could bore you to death with a lot more events. As I looked through my book of career, my career book, I found a lot of highlights, a lot of enjoyable moments, a lot of enjoyable events, a lot of enjoyable people and places. For the most part, being a revenue officer has been a great job. Especially the first 20 years when it seemed like all we really had to do was go out and get the money. I'd like to close with saying a few thank yous and a few words to those that I've worked so closely with through the years, and to those I'm leaving behind to carry the torch. Willie, I appreciate your willingness. You've always been there, and you've always been a helper. Anything that needed to be done, Willie was right there saying, "I'll help." And if we could just get the fishing pole out of his hand, he'd be a lot more. Larry, I'll never forget the day that I interviewed you. A young lady came bouncing into the office, and me and, what was the guy's name that helped interview you? Sweeney. Sweeney said, "You think she'd be a good revenue officer?" And I said, if she can produce as good as she can talk, she'll be a great revenue officer. Seemed like only yesterday, though. Susan, hang in there. Just keep asking them for the money. That's all you got to do. I can tell you one thing. Raising 2 boys is a lot harder than being a revenue officer. Kerry, I hope you're the very best in the super group. I hope you're a super revenue officer, Bob. I hope all your cases are full page. Sharon, you brought a flair of New Orleans to our group when you came. And Susan, if you think you've got trouble, she's got 4. She's got 4. Jimmy, even though you're not in collection anymore and you had to have the very good 2020 site to make the move, I feel kind of like your dad, you know, I guess, because I'm old enough to be. I think I was collecting taxes even before you were born, if I think that's right. But I remember the day we interviewed you and hired you for this job. I was really impressed with your work ethic then. I'm even more impressed with it today. Congratulations on becoming a special agent. Kayla, if you could give your ability, your knowledge, and your talent to 3 more people in the district, it wouldn't take 4 to work the whole state. I really enjoyed our years working together, Kayla. You've been a joy to work with, and I appreciate all your help you've given me. One thing about working with Kayla was you could go to Kayla and ask her a question, and you'd get an answer, and sometimes you'd even get a right one.
You might have to browse to get it.
Bob, I think the best thing I can say about Bob is Kayla. No, I'm just kidding, Robert. I think the best part about you is your ponytail. I love that ponytail. been very helpful, Bob, and I appreciate all the help you've given me. Marion, when I think about you, I think about a ray of sunshine. You always have a smile. You always have something good to say about somebody. And you just warm up everything around the office, and I appreciate that. You always have a word of encouragement. I was very sorry when you left the first time, but I was elated when you came back. Our group is blessed. Not lucky, blessed to have you. Pat, when I needed to get something done, I knew who to call. I knew that you would get it done and you would do it right. I've not seen anybody who can crank out work any faster or any better. Our group has been very fortunate to have you for a revenue officer aide, and I hope that you move on to bigger and better things. Norm, I have a psychiatrist lined up to talk to you. Anybody who could get off of the front counter, who could make the great escape and come back? I'm just kidding. You do a great job of running the counter. I think you have the hardest job in the entire revenue show. Bar none. Jermaine, it seems like only yesterday you came to work. I remember those long acting manager and trainee sessions we used to have when I was acting manager between Dennis and Jerry Watkins. Ed would come in and we'd have our discussion, and Jermaine would say, I'm not ever going to learn everything there is to know about this job. And I kept telling her, you're right. You're right. I learned something the last week before I left I've never run into in my life before. Henry McKenna. I have a lot of admiration for Henry. He had the foresight to get out of being a revenue officer and go into management. But I've talked to Henry a lot of times over the years, and every time Henry and I talked about his employees, he had something good to say about his employees. Every time. And I've never gotten over that. He didn't run his people down. He didn't criticize his people. He always had something good to say. Wish I could have been in your group, man. Wish you could have been my manager for a while. Charlotte, while you were here, we worked on some pretty tough cases. I remember the morning we went out and inventoried the latest furniture, and I thought she was going to inventory us before we went out. Cliff, we had some good times, didn't we? Cliff and I, when we started to work, we ate lunch every day down in Monsoors. I don't know if any of you go back that far or not, but at Monsoors in 1965, you could get a big old chunk of roast beef, 2 vegetables, your drink, and a dessert for 65 cents. And I'll never forget Cliff complaining when he went up to 75. Dennis, it's been a real pleasure to work for you and work with you. I don't feel like I worked for you. I feel like I worked with you. You were more than a manager. You were only my 4th manager in 30 years. It seemed like you just got here, now I left. I really appreciate the way you handle some things for me and the others in the office. It's meant a lot to have your support and your backing. I appreciate it more than you'll ever know. I hope you're the very best in your career. Joyce, we just celebrated our 15th anniversary, you told me. I'll never forget my first time I saw Joyce. Little skinny girl, she was about that big.
Just a baby.
Everywhere except in the middle, and she was this big. You could go by Joyce's desk and he didn't attack you when you walked by. You were like, there were papers stacked here, everywhere you looked. When you said, Joyce, where's manual supplement 52G12? She would go, here. She could always find it. She knew right where it was. You know, I helped hire a lot of people. I remember the day of your interview when we interviewed you to be a revenue officer. I told you I thought you'd do a good revenue officer. And you haven't disappointed. You've studied and you worked real hard and you've overcome some personal difficulties that most of us would have caved in over. I hope you're very best. Bill, I always thought you'd be the first to retire ahead of me. That's because you're so much older than me. I can't look back at my career without bumping into Bill's. When two people have worked together as long as we have, we shared a lot of things. We could probably write a book. Bill and I have moved from 617 Market Street to 500 Fenton Street to 307 Ninth Street. And Bill, if you don't hurry up, our next move is going to be to Forest Park. Bill, it's been great working with you. I appreciate all you have. I appreciate all your funny stories, your quick wit, your friendship. It's really been great. John Berger, I remember the first time I met you in Baton Rouge. We were at a CPE, and you really impressed me because you agreed with what I was saying. You agreed with my philosophy.
That's the last time.
And I wrote it down. That's two. There was one more beside it. Then you came to Shreveport and we had the opportunity to really work together on some tough cases. We chased a few bandits, we cracked some real tough puzzles, and we made some impressions that are going to last a long time. I'll never forget the Fuller case, never forget the Lovell case, never forget the Gallagher case, never forget the Smith case. I think you're one of the best and most dedicated revenue officers I've ever met. Most of all, I appreciate the friendship that our families have grown to share. That's been very special to Patsy and me as we approach retirement, and we look forward to it even more so. To everybody else who's here, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate you caring enough to come pay $17 for this. To my wife, thank you for being understanding. Thank you for being there and caring. And thank you for our 35 years.